This community, for some reason, has just a good feeling about it. My wife gives me a hard time because when we go to the grocery store, she says it's an all-night event because you see people there and you visit with them.
It's home. It's home to me, and that's really what I love about it. It is home.
When I moved here, there was one stoplight. Heber has grown a lot since then, and it's changed a ton, but it's still a small town feel. And I love that you kind of just feel like you're watching out for everyone else's kids. I love it.
It's one of the reasons why I feel like that the hospital in general is so important here is when I was a young kid, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I fell out of the top of a hay barn in the North Fields, which is just north of town. And as I fell, when I hit the wooden floor of the barn, I had thought that my father and I thought I'd been paralyzed. And I remember the EMTs coming into the barn and scooping me up on a stretcher. And as they unloaded me out of the ambulance into the Heber Valley Hospital, which was the old hospital on Center Street, we had hay all over the hospital. And I was just so worried back then that we'd made such a mess in there and nobody ever breathed a word of it. But it just made me think how important it is to have the right care and actually be blessed that we have the hospital that we do here in our valley.
So when the hospital was built in 1999, it was built around a population of about 13 or 14,000 people. So you can imagine we're now at about 31,000 people in Wasatch County. What that means relative to the hospital's capabilities in terms of just simply physical footprint.
Our call volumes have increased by about 200 calls per year over the past 3 or 4 years.
When people come to the emergency department, it's because something's happened in their day that they hadn't planned for, whether it's an injury or an illness or something emergent like a heart attack or a stroke. So we have to always be ready in these times of their life that can be very stressful and very tragic sometimes.
I think in my tenure as an EMT, there's not a time that the pager goes off that you just don't feel those butterflies in your stomach. I have to remember that when we respond to some of these patients, and some of them, quite honestly, you respond to these calls and you think, I really would rather not be here. But the thing that I have to remember is that that's somebody's mother, that's somebody's father, that's somebody's son or daughter or uncle. It becomes difficult, obviously, in situations where there's a loss of life and how you deal with that. And there's almost sometimes a reverent feeling in those situations because you just feel so emotionally tied to the situation.
We have a unique opportunity as caregivers. We get to be here in the hospital. We get to see the faces of people when they come in, the fear, the anxiety, the concern, and we get to see the smile that's on their face sometimes when they leave. We get to see them leave healthy, sometimes they don't, but we get to help them along that way. Those are sacred moments. So for our donors, those that are considering donating, I want them to feel and consider that they're participating with us in that. They're not donating to a facility in terms of bricks and mortar, not even really donating to the hospital. You are donating to individuals. That's what you're donating to, your friends, your family, your neighbors, the people that live in this valley on a permanent basis, and those that come through just in passing.
If I would have known I was going to raise 5 boys, I would have definitely gone into the medical field. We spend a lot of time taking our kids to the doctor. I could go to the ER probably once a month if I wanted to. As I have had kids, my oldest child, I had him in the emergency room probably 4 times before he was 2 years old. Once because he stuck like Skittles up his nose and I was worried that he wasn't going to breathe. But of course, by the time we saw the doctor, Skittles had melted and he was totally fine. So I've learned that it is not cheap to go to the emergency room for every little emergency that I think comes up. So we spent a lot of time at doctor's offices and we always meet our deductible. Just a couple weeks ago, my sister, her son fell at recess and broke his ankle, and she tried to get him into doctors here, and there was no one that could see him that day, and they were leaving out of town that night, so she had to run over to Park City, and she said, I wish that we had an InstaCare like this in Heber. It was so convenient. And so I am so excited to have something like this that will better serve our community.
If a patient were to go to an urgent care instead of an emergency department, there is an estimated cost savings of 80% for a self-pay patient and 75% for an insured patient with equal quality of care. So you can see that providing access to urgent care is an important part of reducing the overall cost of medicine. Currently on a Wednesday evening, we are open the walk-in clinic at 6 o'clock. Typically, there are 10 to 12 patients waiting, and we frequently will see 25 patients in 3 hours, at least what is intended to be a 3-hour shift. We're often here till 11 or 12 at night. Those patients wait a long time, but they need to be seen. They have urgent needs, and they wait a long time because that's what's available to them now. When the Heber Valley InstaCare opens, it will be open for 12 hours a day, so those patients that need to be seen can be spread throughout the day and can come at their own convenience to get their needs met.
I read something recently that said we have 1,440 minutes in a day. That means we have 1,440 opportunities to do good things for people every day. With that being said, there are so many people in so many different walks of life in our community. Some have the ability to be able to help us financially to help Heber Valley Hospital grow. And I would just hope that people would kind of take a look at what they can really do in our community. Some might be able to give a little, some might be able to give a lot. We have the ability to make a difference in people's lives. And it would be my hope that we can reach out and recognize that there might be something that we can do to make a difference.